There we are. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Aura's BTH Virtual Town Halls. I host these conversations every Wednesday with people from the community, to foster dialogue and share ideas about topics that are important to us, to our families, and to our community. Today, I am super honored and excited to have a conversation with Jane from Ktown for All, and she's been a fearless advocate for homelessness and the unsheltered community in Los Angeles. So, welcome, Jane. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for having me. I am trying to figure out this multi-streaming platform, and I think there's an echo, and I just can't seem to turn.
Okay, if you lowered your volume on your phone, try check your phone and then your computer, and you'll be fine. And while we figured out this sound so that nobody can hear an echo here for us, I am speaking to Jane from Ktown for All. She's going to walk us through what's going on in terms of our unsheltered community in Los Angeles. Why are we criminalizing poverty, guys? Like, I feel that this is the real conversation that we need to have. It seems so innocent sometimes, that, we don't want those people in my backyard. We don't want them near us. But, they're part of our community, and they're also a symptom of a bigger problem that we're seeing, which I'm going to get to talk to Jane more, which is housing. Who's making what money, who gets to get ahead, in a city like Los Angeles, which is the second largest city in the country with some of the most expensive zip codes. Jane, how are you doing?
I think I figured out the whole sound thing.
Beautiful.
So hopefully there's no echo, but let me know if there's any echo. Thank you for having me.
Beautiful. So, first I want to just learn, how did you get involved with Ktown for All? I know that you're one of the co-founders. So what was that moment? What happened to you that you decided, this is time to step up in our community and protect and support our unsheltered folks?
Yeah, so I over 2 years ago, I knew nothing about homelessness. I knew that we had a problem, but I kind of just assumed that the city or county or some kind of government entity was taking care of people, because I thought, how could they not, And then when I saw that there was an announcement that the city was going to build a bridge home shelter in Koreatown, there were huge protests against that. And I was so upset because, thousands of people were out marching against like the most basic form of shelter, in which we live in a city in which there are tens of thousands of unhoused people. And so I got really angry. So to be perfectly honest, what has motivated me is sheer rage and anger, that their fellow neighbors could be so opposed to basic care for the community. And then that anger translated into the city neglecting to care for our unhoused neighbors. Yeah.
Wow. So I remember that clearly, because this is right on the times when I was also a member of the Wheelchair Center Koreatown Neighborhood Council.
Oh,
and
wow.
I was finishing my terms actually there, and we had a lot of conversations around homelessness. And I can totally see why in Ktown there was such an anti-homeless, sentiment, which is super sad. So, and rage sometimes is good. Sometimes we need to get outraged and upset and mad, and just like, it's kind of like that expression. If you're not outraged, you're not looking, you're not watching what's going on, right? Because it's just so outrageous. So how did you go from you understanding that this was happening in our community and to creating Ktown for All? So just walk us a little bit through this process, because I feel like a lot of folks that are watching my live stream don't know much about Ktown for All and the amazing work that you guys do.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you for asking that question and helping to teach your audience about what we do, who we are. So, as the protests were happening, there was just a handful of us who started counter protesting, and then that grew into a few more dozen people, and then 100 people. And it felt to us that, the voices of people who are not being involved in the conversation about the shelter were actually unhoused people in our community. And so we started doing outreach to talk to people to see what their needs are. And then that turned into a weekly thing. So every week we would go out, provide hygiene supplies, resource sheets, information, water, snacks, to our unhoused neighbors. And we realized that there was an overwhelming need for just even the most basic services, basic care. Back then there were no bathrooms. I mean, there are some porta potties now, but that's because of COVID. But in a neighborhood with hundreds, at that time it was 300, 400 unhoused people, there was not a single porta potty, no bathroom. And now it's ballooned to 600 or so unhoused people in Koreatown. So the situation is just getting worse. And what Ktown for All does is we empower our neighbors, our community to talk to their unhoused neighbors, to get involved in the political process, and to advocate for the right to housing and the right to services.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see that the Board of Supervisors of Los Angeles try to take action to criminalize homelessness, to criminalize living on the street. And now it feels like the city of Los Angeles is also doing the same. So, you're someone that has been so entrenched with this issue. You have been going out there, you have educated people on this issue, you have done outreach for our unsheltered folks to get the necessities that they need. PPE, washing their hands, basic. Guys, these are the stuff that sometimes we don't think about, but that our neighbors are going through. I mean, can you imagine going a few days without having a bathroom that you can go to? I mean, these are the basic necessities that you need as a human: taking a shower, washing your hands. We're in a pandemic. And it's incredible to me that instead of finding more solutions, we actually have been trying to criminalize being homeless. And that's also, for me, criminalizing poverty. So I want you to maybe talk about, in your outreach, you speak to a lot of unsheltered folks, unhoused folks that are, sleeping on the streets every night. What are some of the stories from these folks that talk about why they ended up on the streets? If you can maybe share some testimonials about how people end up sleeping in the park or in the bench or under the bridge.
Yeah, well, everyone, obviously does not like sleeping outside. Everyone wants to be in housing. And most of these people, they were just like you and me. They're from the neighborhood or from nearby. And they grew up, they had a life just like you and me in Los Angeles as a housed person. And then through some unfortunate circumstance, they got evicted. And then, what would often happen is they would live in their car for a bit, and then their car would get towed because they can't afford parking tickets, for example. So that's a pretty common storyline from what I hear. So there is this, one of the people who we befriended at the very beginning. His name was Joe. He's just a sweet, outgoing, friendly man who lived in Koreatown for 11 years. And he said, he never missed rent ever. But then his apartment building got sold to a new owner, and then the new owner jacked up the rent and evicted everyone. So what happened was this man who was living in an apartment for 11 years in this neighborhood ended up in a tent across the street. And then the city came, they threw away all of his things, they threw away his heart medication, and then he passed away a few weeks later. So that's a pretty common tragic story in LA.
Wow. And you touch an important topic that we can we have to talk about, when we talk about homelessness, which is housing and affordable housing and housing affordability. I was reading before I, joined this interview with you. I was reading that half of the homeless folks today in Los Angeles this is the first time they recently in the past year became unsheltered. And that's alarming because we're going through a pandemic where a lot of people lost their jobs, and a lot of people are not going to have the means to stay in their homes. So what are some of the solutions that you guys in Ktown for All support and promote in terms of preventing homelessness, keeping people in their homes?
Yeah, I mean, that's not surprising at all that there's a large number of people that are getting evicted and becoming homeless for the very first time, because we're in the middle of a pandemic and an economic crisis, and our politicians are doing nothing to help us.
Yeah.
So at Ktown for All, we advocate for policies that prevent homelessness. So that's the easiest way to start to end homelessness, is you prevent people from becoming homeless in the first place. And you can do that through policies like canceling rent, having an eviction moratorium so that nobody can get evicted during this crisis. And City Council refused to do both of those things. So they chose not to implement like a standard eviction ban, and they won't even consider canceling rent. So they've failed on the preventing homelessness aspect, and then they failed to produce housing units. So Prop HHH was supposed to build 10,000 units, and so now it looks like it's going to be more like 6,000, 7,000 units, and they've only opened up about like 500 units so far. So there are 30,000 unsheltered people, over 44,000 homeless people in the city of LA, and they're only going to build like 6,000, 7,000 units for the next 10 years. That's not sustainable. They need to do other things. And we have like solutions for those things. And it's in, the UCLA had a report on commandeering hotels. So LA has 100,000 hotel units. We're in the middle of a pandemic. They're not being used. They need to use those empty units and house people right now, because people are dying, and 4 people are dying of homelessness every day in LA.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, it's been such a sticky point because we have the folks that don't want to see our unsheltered neighbors on the streets, but they also don't want to build more housing in their neighborhoods to prevent homelessness. So it's such a sad situation to see also in Los Angeles, like the dispute between NIMBYs, not in my backyard, and YIMBYs. The reality is that we need to find, solutions that work. So somebody's asking, and Carla is asking on Instagram, what can folks do to hold the city council accountable in relation to developers influencing them? I mean, I ran for city council, and one of the things that I researched and I learned a lot about is the money in politics, and how developers are putting people in office so that they can do what they want. And affordable housing is not affordable anymore. It will not be affordable for the people that live in that area. So what can everyday people like me and like everyone that is watching, what can they do to hold the city council accountable in relation to developers influencing them?
Organize, join your local LA Tenants Union.
Absolutely.
Join like another organization, Ground Game, DSA there, or if you're in Ktown, obviously join Ktown for All. But you can also join us if you're not in Ktown, by the way. There are lots of people who
everybody's welcome.
Exactly. But yeah, so when you are part of an organization, you can put some more pressure on city council members to follow through on actually serving the community instead of developers. But I mean, the whole system is just so entrenched with, city council members prioritizing their reelection and prioritizing their donor base. So it really is difficult to get them to pay attention to you as a non-rich developer. So it just takes a lot of organizing, and it takes doing phone banks and calling in to city council when they meet. So that's my response to the question. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, we can't wait until election time to get involved. We got to get involved right now because there's a lot going on in all fronts, in homelessness and the environment and housing. And I want you to talk, Jane, about the latest from the city council to try to criminalize poverty and try to criminalize folks that are already in the worst situation that they can be, which is not having a home, not having a shelter, but make it being outside basically a crime. So can you talk to us a little bit about the new, and give us the numbers, give us who said what, so that my audience can get a real picture of what's going on in LA City Council in terms of fixing or just addressing homelessness. So how are we addressing homelessness right now?
Yeah, well, I'm happy to name names. The people who tried to push this horrific criminalization ordinance. And so what they did was 1 week before the election, it was like the last week of October, they thought nobody's paying attention. So we'll just fast track this ordinance, this proposed ordinance that would make it illegal to sit, sleep, or lie down on the sidewalk. Mm-hmm. And this is something that is a big deal. If you're amending like this major ordinance, it should at least go through committee. But what they did is, and what Nury Martinez did was, she had it waived through the Homelessness and Poverty Committee. So it was introduced on a Wednesday. Mike Fear, city attorney, already had a draft of it. And it was scheduled to vote. The vote was scheduled 1 week later. So this dramatic change to a city ordinance was going to take 1 week from the day it was introduced to the day that they were going to pass it. And they were going to pass it as like an emergency ordinance too, so that it would take effect right away. So they were in like this mad rush to criminalize people. And it was introduced by Bob Blumenfield because he has been really determined to clear people from under the freeway overpasses for a very long time, which is pretty cruel if you think about how the rain is coming when it gets cold. Yeah. People seek refuge under freeway overpasses because it at least keeps their things dry. It's at least like this primitive form of shelter. And so he introduced this motion, and city attorney came out with he made it even worse, and he proposed, hey, let's make it illegal to sleep anywhere on the sidewalk as long as you're offered shelter. But the problem is that LA does not have enough shelters.
There's not enough shelter for folks. Wow.
Yeah. And so this ordinance they tried to pass in 1 week got defeated because we organized. Because
and I just want to zoom in a little bit on this work because it was so important to make sure, because like you said, this was an emergency ordinance that they were trying to pass in the middle of a pandemic right before Thanksgiving. So they really thought that nobody was watching and they were just gonna slip it through and nothing was gonna happen. So you guys did a remarkable job putting pressure. I saw your hashtag trending, house kids not handcuffs, which was beautiful. Sweeps, services not sweeps. And it was just great to see the power of the people. So I know that people are asking how, what can the community do? There it is. So what was the result of all of that public pressure? What did it ended up happening?
Yeah, and I want to speak to how important organizing and calling into public comment is, because that was the thing that defeated this. Like, they had 7 people co-sponsor this, and all they needed was 1 more vote, 8 votes to pass it. And somehow they couldn't get it done. And so Nuri Martinez was furious. And she was like, okay, so we can't get this passed. I'm going to agendize it for 1 more month. So she agendized it for November 24th, which was that yesterday? I can't believe that was yesterday. And so she pushed it, she delayed the vote until November 24th. And we were organizing the entire month. We did Twitter storms. We got that hashtag House Keys Not Handcuffs trending at #1. We protested at their houses. We held press conferences. And we realized we really pushed this into the public dialogue. And so everyone was talking about this because it truly is horrific. And due to the public pressure, Nuri Martinez announced that they will not be voting on it, that they'll just be discussing it. And so that's what they did. I mean, we are always expecting the worst from the city council. We expect that they will try to sneak, just the most inhumane stuff. But because we were paying attention, because we called in, they decided that it would be too unpopular to try to pass this at that time. And so
wow, amazing. Great work. And I would love to see if you are supporting this type of organizing and community support. Please put a thumbs up, a little heart in the comments, because this is, I mean, for all of us that have organized in the past, it can be so difficult. So if you're asking how you can participate, this is the way. Just follow Ktown for All. Jane is the co-founder, and we're speaking to her about how the city of Los Angeles is criminalizing homelessness. So in your opinion, how can the community fight homelessness stigma? I feel like I've seen definitely some change of hearts and minds when people maybe go, and meet unsheltered folks, so what are some of the recommendations that you have for folks that want to organize around homelessness to fight a stigma within their community?
Well, I think the best way to overcome stigma is to get to know someone, to talk to people who are unhoused. Many people are not willing to go out of their comfort zone to do that. And that's totally understandable because I'm a huge introvert. I hate talking to strangers, but I force myself to do this every week because it's important to get to know your neighbors who are struggling and see what you can do to help. And the more that you do that and encourage your neighbors and friends to do it, the more that there's a growing awareness that these are our neighbors who need help, and they're not people to fear. They're just like you and me. And the more that we get just everyday community members involved in listening to the voices of people who are currently unhoused and seeing what they can do to make their lives better, that's the most effective way to solve or to overcome the stigma of homelessness, but also listening to Theo's podcast. So I'm going to plug Theo Henderson, who's the host and creator of We the Unhoused.
And it's amazing. Yeah, I have heard it before. It's really good.
Yeah, and so Theo is currently unhoused, and he does such an amazing job uplifting the voices of people who are also unhoused, interviewing people. Definitely cue that up in your Spotify.
Awesome. Awesome. I wanted to ask you, in this movement, I feel for some elected officials to criminalize homelessness and to criminalize being poor. It's not a crime being poor, and ending up on the streets, like you were sharing earlier, is created by an ecosystem of different things, and not having secure housing, our housing stock being too expensive, losing someone's job, like losing your job, for example, so that then you don't have money to pay rent. Maybe you get sick and you don't have, healthcare. That's why it's so important also for us to push for healthcare for all. All these things work connected. But I want to talk, maybe if you can speak a little bit about the state. And in these comments, somebody is sharing that Newsom has a project called Home Key, and it's like somewhat funding available. How do you find the state and the local level working together to fight homelessness? Is it really working? Is it actually happening? Because I feel like the voters, at least in Los Angeles County, we voted for like $1.5 billion to resolve this issue. And little has been done. I mean, they did a research where housing was $500,000 and people flip out about this. So what are these efforts actually happening, and are they working?
Well, I can tell you that based on one project that the state, county, and city have been trying to partner on, no, it's a failure. They are not doing a good job of working together to house people. So Project Room Key was introduced by Governor Newsom, and it was to place or, take the hotels that are not being used because of the pandemic so that people can safely self-quarantine in hotel rooms. And so the county said, yeah, we're going to prioritize 15,000 people because those are the most vulnerable people in LA to be put in these Project Room Key rooms. And the goal is 15,000, and they've only been able to do over 3,000.
Yeah.
So that's an example of how the state has these ambitions and they have this money, but then the city and county has a difficult time executing that. Yeah. Part of that is because of NIMBYism and hotel owners who refuse to participate, and then part of that is just the lack of political will from people like Mayor Garcetti, who refuses to commandeer hotels because he himself is a hotel owner and all of his buddies probably own hotels. So he doesn't want to upset his donor class.
Yeah, that's just so sad. And I'm reading here from Jessica Lucille that in Chico, they also lost their city and their county to NIMBYism. And it was developers who bought their seats. So again, we see this issue of the money and politics really play out in some of the most vulnerable neighbors that we have, which are our unsheltered, folks. So the state and the city are not really doing a great job when it comes to this, or even connecting the dots. Is the federal level doing anything? Is there federal level sending assistance to local government to assist on this crisis? We're under a crisis. I mean, it's not just the pandemic. This is a crisis that we have over 40,000 people sleeping on our streets in the middle of a pandemic is a public health crisis. So is the federal government doing anything around this?
I'm not so much of an expert on the federal government. So I don't want to I don't want to tell your audiences like this is all of the resources that the federal government is providing. But what I can say is that, there's obviously so much more room for the federal government to step in and help, with funding. So with the CARES Act, so some of the money from that is being used for housing unhoused people, which is good. It's great. And we could always use more federal government, but I think I'm always much more critical of the city, our city leaders, because I know exactly what else they can do. And I've seen them just choose to not do those things, most basic things to help people. So I'm very critical of our city leaders and their excuses, always pivoting to the federal government, saying that, hey, the federal government should do more. But yeah, you could do a lot more too, and you're not. So
yeah. So what are some of the solutions that you guys at Ktown for All and you would like to see? So I see, for example, Stacy, and this is a long comment, so I'm just going to have it up for just a second. But, she's talking about, there are program managers, so like social workers, people need mental health services. make housing affordable. And someone on Instagram was asking, are we doing anything to create more affordable housing options for our unsheltered folks, like cooperative housing?
There's a very there's a tool that incentivizes more affordable housing within transit-rich zones called transit-oriented communities. And so that incentivizes a bit more affordable housing, but at the same time, it also could lead to gentrification. And so with these new buildings that are near transit lines, they have to build like 5% or so affordable units. But even then, that's not enough. And so relying on a private entity to provide affordable housing is never going to work. What we need is the government to build housing that stays permanently affordable and for the community. So Mike Bonin has been introducing the social housing measure under the Homes Guarantee. So he's been a real champion of more like public social housing. And that's what we need right now.
And I think that is also a space for great education when it comes to, to social housing. A lot of people think that, they're going to be lazy and these are people that don't want to work. It's kind of similar to the same mentality that people have about people living on the streets, that they drink, that they do drugs, and then they have so much fun, when they're like in the streets. And it's so hard to see that kind of rhetoric, running around. You see it sometimes in forums, like in blogs and stuff like that, where there's like hyper local. You see so much. They can be, really loud when it comes to that. And earlier you were mentioning that actually unsheltered people just kind of end up being there, that a lot of them are not, drunks or drug addicts. And that's like the big misconception about being homeless.
Yeah, but even if they are, I mean, who amongst us do not drink or do drugs? Housed people have a lot of problems too, like just as much as unhoused people. I mean, but the state of being unhoused obviously exacerbates all of that because people are traumatized and they self-medicate sometimes through drugs, and it affects people's mental health. Like you cannot just try to survive on the streets and not be traumatized by it. And so the response to trauma and mental health issues and drugs is through care and services, not through criminalization.
Absolutely. So, we're 40 minutes in. What would you like to tell our audience in terms of doing, what was the latest? So we have this resolution at the city council level that is on hold. So there's no time to take a break, guys, or like, yes, celebrate and be with family today and tomorrow. But comes Friday, we need to get to work. So what are we asking people to do comes Friday, post Thanksgiving, or even tomorrow, to support not criminalizing our unsheltered community in Los Angeles?
Yeah, unfortunately, this is not going away, this criminalization ordinance. They're really determined to make people's lives harder because they want the appearance of clean streets. They want, they prioritize aesthetics over actually helping people. And so certain council members, such as Bob Blumenfield, who pushed the motion, and there are some others as well, Joe Buscaino, Nuri Martinez, John Lee. Yeah. So they are going to send this through committee. And when it goes to the committee, which the Homelessness and Poverty Committee, we need as many people as possible to call in to oppose this, because it's working, because they do respond to a flood of public comments that they get and the bad publicity behind this. So we need to keep paying attention. And, you can follow us, Ktown for All, on Twitter and Instagram so that you can get the latest on what's happening. We'll definitely issue a call to action if we see anything happening so that you can call in. You can follow our partner orgs as well, Streetwatch LA, People's City Council, LA Can, Ground Game, organizations that we've been working with under the Services Not Sweeps Coalition. So we're paying attention to it, and we'll let the world know if we need to mobilize.
Absolutely, absolutely. The other thing that I want to just pitch people now that are watching is, we need incredible electoral work to be done, guys. We need to get involved in elections. We need to elect good people. We just named like 6 elected. That's almost half of the city council. That is a moderate to more even right or to more conservative. And we need to make sure that LA, we have great pride that we are very progressive and that we're liberal and that we are very environmental friendly and that we're leading the country in so many ways. And we need to lead the country with having elected officials that are accountable to people and that also have progressive policies that are addressing the root cause of problems like homelessness, that are not going to criminalize people, but actually are going to find sound solutions for the causes like affordable housing, like mental health services, like right to counsel when you are going to get evicted, like a moratorium on evictions. In the middle of a pandemic, we need to cancel rent and mortgages. So I want to really folks to really leave this live stream understanding that we need to plug in with Ktown for All, with all of the organizations that Jen mentioned, Ground Game, LA Can. I mean, you mentioned a lot of them, and we also need to get behind good people that are running for city council that align with our values so that they can lead us, so that we don't have to show up to their homes and also break their Twitter accounts. How has been that experience for you guys to be so visible and get like even your hashtag trending and such? Like, how has that been for you guys as an organization in terms of building power?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't like us because of that, to be totally honest. We make a lot of enemies because there are interests that want to criminalize people. And so, but overall, like the response has been overwhelmingly positive because, as you said, LA is liberal. I mean, is progressive. And if the recent election was any indication, people are voting to defund the police. LA County does not believe that the police are the solutions to these things, and we believe in compassion and kindness and care. It's just that we need to tell people about what's going on because most people don't realize that city council could make it illegal to sleep on a sidewalk. They have so much power to just be cruel. And I don't think most of LA is aware that their voices can make a difference. And I wasn't aware at all.
Yeah, and we need you on public comments. That's not a joke. That's not something that it's not for me. It's actually for all of us. It's for you too. And now they make it so much easier because you can just join the Zoom call. For folks that have never done a call on a public comment, how hard is that nowadays? Like how cumbersome it is?
Well, in some ways, it's made it more accessible because you don't have to show up at City Hall anymore. You can call from the comfort of your bed if you want to. You can just dial in, and then you'll be let into the Zoom room, and they'll tell you like there are X number of people in the room, and then eventually you could get called on. And it really just depends on like how long Mary Martinez decides to hold public comment. Sometimes, she'll start the meeting late and then she'll hold public comment for like 30 minutes. So only like 10 people can get in. but if you can't make it to public comment, what we always need people to do is call their city council member and email them, because they get so many more emails from hateful NIMBYs. They get complaints all the time.
They're so much louder than us.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Jane, thank you so much for everything that you do for our community. You can, of course, always count on me to support in any way I can. I guess my last question for you, and I just want to maybe leave this question to the audience. So also feel free to post this answer in the comments. What are you thankful for this Thanksgiving?
Are you asking me? Are you asking?
Yeah, I'm asking you, and I'm asking everyone in the audience. So everybody can go ahead and post in the comments. What are you grateful for this Thanksgiving?
Well, you know, the first thing that comes to my mind is I'm grateful for Black Lives Matter. I'm grateful for Black Lives Matter LA leading the movement to defund the police, and just the amazing work that they put in. We're currently trying to oppose Garcetti's appointment to the Biden administration right now. They're leading the charge on that, and it's been, it's just been such a profound experience. Seeing the change happening through our community led by Black Lives Matter. And we're going to keep following their leadership. So, so that's what I'm thankful for.
and that's beautiful. So please post on the comments, what are you grateful for? If you want to get involved, you can always follow Ktown for All. They're in all social media platforms. This is Jane. She's the co-founder of Ktown for All and an incredible advocate, fearless advocate, I would say, an organizer on homelessness issues. So thank you so much for being here. I am deeply grateful that I have good health, that I have an incredible community that keeps growing, and that are doing really good work. I feel that my calling is definitely becoming more prominent and more open every day, So for that, I'm grateful for you too, Jane, because I see all the work that you do, and we all working in our little, corners. I found it Ready to Help, and we're doing also our thing for students that are homeless, for students that don't have computers so that they can attend distance learning, and so many people are doing whatever they can, but please follow the work of Ktown for All. We're so grateful for you and for all the work. This isn't easy, and I'm sure you can relate to this. We don't get a single dollar for doing all of this stuff for the community, but we feel compelled to do it. So for that, I'm really, really grateful. I'm grateful that I get to see my family these holidays, guys, so I'm really grateful for that. Thank you so much. Let us know, Jane, keep us informed so that everyone that is watching and my folks that follow my Instagram can get involved with your cause, and we can support you, and very soon, join you with public comment and everything else that you need.
Yeah, and thank you, Ara, for supporting Ktown for All's outreach efforts with the mask and everything. It's so critical. And engaging your community to support us as well. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. All right, and we hope that you come back pretty soon.
Thank you.
Come back and let us know. So if things develop and they get sour, we here for you. So come back, and we can do a little mini training, in fact, for folks, and get everybody involved so that we can have a kick-ass public comment showing.
Thank you.
All right, my friend. Thank you so much. So friends, that was Jane from Ktown for All. She's an incredible human being, as you guys saw. Please follow their work. Go to Ktown for All on Twitter, on Instagram, and on Facebook. They're everywhere. I post often about them. They need our support more than ever. This Thanksgiving, don't forget that there are thousands of people sleeping in our streets every night that need us. So learn more about how to support our unsheltered community by visiting Ktown for All social media. It's been wonderful to have you guys. I hope that you have an incredible holiday tomorrow for those that celebrate, for those that don't celebrate. Keep being thankful and grateful because that's all we have in life. And being happy and gratitude sometimes is not easy to obtain. So have a wonderful evening, everyone. And I talk to you soon. Bye.